Imagine a desert cave. It's dark, it's silent, and it's holding secrets that are about to, well, completely change our understanding of history.
We're talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, of course, discovered between 1947 and 1956.
And the sheer age of these things is just, it's mind-blowing. Some texts go all the way back to 250 BC.
Right, up to around 8070. And these are the oldest surviving biblical texts we have, period. They predate the copies we used to rely on by a full 1,000 years.
A millennium. It's an incredible window into the past.
It really is. A window into Jewish law, ritual, and some really revolutionary ideas about the Messiah, all right before the rise of Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism.
But for this deep dive, we want to zoom in on one document in particular, the foundational one.
That would be the community rule, which scholars call 1QS. It's basically the key that unlocks the rest of the library.
So it's a sectarian document. It lays out all the rules and beliefs for the group that, either wrote or collected all these texts.
Exactly. The group calls itself the Yahad, which just means the community. And because we have 1QS, their internal rule book, we can look at the other 900 manuscripts and say, okay, this one fits their ideology.
Which is how you get to that figure, that about 30% of the scrolls are classified as sectarian.
It's the community's DNA. So our mission today is to use this document, this community rule, and the wider library to see just how diverse and, frankly, how strange Judaism was back then.
First, we have to know who these people were. So let's start with the discovery story, because it feels like something out of a movie.
It really does. The first scrolls, 1QS included, were found in Cave 1 near Qumran.
And the story goes, a Bedouin shepherd, Muhammad Abtib, is looking for a lost goat. He throws a rock into a cave.
And instead of the goat, he hears the sound of shattering pottery. He was literally throwing a stone at history.
So he goes in and finds these tall jars filled with ancient leather scrolls. And that find immediately kicks off this huge debate. Who were these people?
Right. And for decades, the leading theory was the Essene hypothesis.
The idea that these texts belonged to the Essenes, a Jewish sect that historians like Josephus wrote about. What's the archaeological proof for that at the site itself?
Well, the Qumran settlement shows this intense concern for ritual purity, which lines up perfectly with the texts. They found nearly 10 mikvatur ritual baths.
10? That's a lot for a small community.
It's an unusually high number. And the scrolls talk about communal meals, strict rules for living together. It all paints a picture of a segregated religious group, a lot like the Essenes that Josephus described.
Okay, so that seems pretty solid. A strict religious group, lots of baths. But this is where the story gets really interesting because the consensus starts to fall apart.
It does. There are some major contradictions.
For one, the cemetery next to Qumran, when they excavated parts of it, they found female skeletons.
Which is a problem, because Josephus mostly describes the Essenes as a male-only monastic order. He does mention some Essenes married, but it complicates the picture.
And it doesn't stop there. There's another theory that the Qumran site wasn't a monastery at all.
Yes, the theory from archaeologists Megan and Peleg. They argued it was just a pottery factory, a big industrial one that made the jars the scrolls were found in.
If it's just a factory, then that blows the whole idea that this community wrote all the scrolls right out of the water.
Exactly. And honestly, the range of ideas in the scrolls is just too wide for one single sect to have written all of them. You even find texts that reflect Sadducean views.
So that leads to this other idea, the Jerusalem refuge theory,
which has gained a lot of traction lately. The idea is that the scrolls weren't written at Qumran. They were collected from libraries all over Jerusalem by different Jewish groups. Essenes, maybe temple priests, others fleeing the Romans in AD 70.
And the caves were just a hiding place, a safe deposit box for their most precious texts.
A massive, secure, long-term storage locker. And the physical evidence backs this up. Chemical analysis of the pottery jars showed that only about half them were made from local Qumran clay.
The rest came from somewhere else.
From all over. And some recent research on the texts written in cryptic codes links them to writing styles used by Jerusalem temple priests. So the library looks less like one sect's collection and more like a greatest hits of Jewish thought from that time.
Whether they wrote them or just hid them, the discovery itself sent shockwaves through our understanding of the Bible.
Oh, absolutely. It showed us that the biblical text was much more fluid, much more unsettled than we ever imagined, right up until the canon was stabilized around 100 CE.
The Bible wasn't a single fixed book yet. It was still a work in progress.
And you can see this so clearly in the great Isaiah scroll, 1Q Isa. It's the star of the show. A nearly complete scroll, 24 feet long.
And it's 1,000 years older than the Masoretic text. For anyone listening, the Masoretic text is the standard Hebrew version that forms the basis for our modern Bibles.
Right. And when you put this ancient scroll next to that later standard text, they don't match perfectly. There are over 2,600 textual variants.
2,600 differences. Are they mostly small, like spelling?
Many are, but some are significant. So significant, in fact, that modern translations like the NIV and RSV have actually adopted some of the Dead Sea Scroll readings, like a phrase in Isaiah 53.11, because scholars think it's more original.
But some of these variants are more than just clarifications. They're theological bombshells, like the one in Deuteronomy 32.
This one is huge. The later, standard Masoretic text in verse 8 says God divided the nations according to the number of the children of Israel.
Which fits that later theology. 70 nations for the 70 sons of Jacob. Makes sense.
But the Qumran scroll is completely different.
What does it say?
It reads that God set the boundaries of the nations according to the number of the sons of God.
The sons of God. Wow.
It's monumental. It's a fossil, preserving an incredibly early Jewish theology where God had a divine council of, well, divine sons, a concept that was later suppressed, maybe because it felt too close to polytheism or maybe because of the rise of Christianity.
So a couple of words change everything. It's like finding a whole lost chapter of religious thought.
It is. And that diversity of thought just explodes when you look at what they expected to happen at the end of days.
This is what I find so fascinating. They weren't waiting for a single savior figure. They were expecting a whole team.
At least two, maybe three distinct figures. The scrolls completely revolutionized our understanding of messianism in this period.
And the core evidence for this comes from the community rule, right? The document we started with.
That's right. The key passage is in 1QS, section 9. It says the community has to follow the law until the prophet comes, and the messiahs of Aaron in Israel.
Messiahs, plural. So two of them. A messiah of Aaron and a messiah of Israel. And they're not equals, are they?
Not at all. The Messiah of Aaron, the priestly Messiah, is the senior partner. He has superior status.
Why the priest over the king?
Because for this community, restoring the temple, ritual purity, and proper atonement was the #1 priority. The priest Messiah is the high priest of the end times who makes that final atonement. You even see this hierarchy in their plans for the future, like in the Messianic banquet.
Right. The scroll called the Rule of the Congregation describes that banquet.
And in it, the priest blesses the bread and wine first. The king Messiah only acts second. The priestly line of Aaron comes before the royal line of David.
So the king Messiah, the Messiah of Israel, what's his job?
He's the military and political leader. He's the shoot of David, the victorious warrior who will strike the peoples and destroy the enemy, who they call the Kittim.
Probably the Romans.
That's the general consensus, yes. And then besides those two, they were also expecting a third figure, the prophet, a kind of returning Moses or Elijah, to teach everyone the right way.
But the list of saviors doesn't even stop there. Some texts point to a superhuman figure, completely separate from the priests and kings.
That's the next layer of complexity. You have texts like 4Q246, which talks about a figure who is called the Son of God and Son of the Most High, which sounds a lot like the Son of Man figure from the book of Daniel, a cosmic heavenly savior.
And then there's Melchizedek.
Yes, the text 11Q Melchizedek portrays this heavenly being, Melchizedek, as the one who executes divine justice at the end. So you don't just have two messiahs. You have a priest, a king, a prophet, and a heavenly liberator. It's a kaleidoscope of expectation.
Which all ties back to how this community wanted to live their lives right now in perfect holiness.
Exactly. Which brings us to the Temple Scroll, 11Q19. It's the longest of all the scrolls.
And it's basically a blueprint for the perfect temple. A new, idealized one.
And it's presented as a direct revelation from God to Moses. The implication is pretty clear.
The temple standing in Jerusalem at that time was wrong. It was impure, illegitimate.
That's the subtext. This scroll was the real blueprint, the one Solomon should have used. And its design, with 3 massive concentric courts, was all about creating a zone of absolute expanding holiness.
A holiness that went way beyond the temple walls to cover the entire city.
The entire city becomes an extension of the temple, and the purity rules are, well, extreme.
Give us the most striking example of this hyperpurity.
The rules on sexual purity are very telling. The scroll says that if a man has an ejaculation, quote, for 3 days shall not enter anywhere in the city of the temple.
For 3 days. Not just banned from the temple, but banned from the whole city. That's incredibly strict.
Exponentially more stringent than standard law. And this rule pops up again in another key text, the Damascus document, which proves these ideas were central to their theology. It basically turns the entire city of Jerusalem into the Holy of Holies.
And the Temple Scroll wasn't just adding rules, it was actively rewriting and combining laws from the Torah.
Precisely. It weaves together laws from Exodus to Deuteronomy to create new requirements,
Yeah.
like demanding 4 different first fruits festivals instead of just the one in the Bible. It was a total legal overhaul to achieve a level of holiness they felt was lost.
So if we pull back for a moment, the key takeaways here are huge. First, the Dead Sea Scrolls prove the Bible wasn't set in stone yet. It was still evolving.
Right. And second, they just shattered the idea that Second Temple Judaism was monolithic. There was this incredible wild diversity of belief and practice.
And finally, and maybe most importantly, their messianic hope wasn't focused on one person. It was spread out across a whole cast of characters. A priest, a king, a prophet, and a divine being.
A completely decentralized vision of salvation.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a really important question to think about. This community, and others like them, had this complex, multi-headed vision of the end times with all these different roles.
So how did a belief system, developed in that exact same era, eventually take all of those different functions? The royal, the priestly, the prophetic, even the heavenly, and merge them all into a single historical person.
Understanding this original multiplicity of messiahs gives you an incredible baseline for seeing just how radical the later developments in both Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism really were.
The journey from many agents of salvation to just one is one of the most important and often forgotten stories in religious history.
Something profound to consider as you explore these ancient texts. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.